I've gotta be honest, FNaF hasn't been scary for a long time. Part of that is probably because I've gotten older, while the other part of it falls on the series itself. But scary or not, one thing has been a constant with the FNaF series over time. This is a series created and fostered by animators, with Scott Cawthon being an animator before being a game designer, and Steelwool Studios being founded by former Pixar employees. It's no question why the series has, mostly, always flourished in terms of its character designs. Designs that, by and large, I wouldn't consider scary to me, but that I can still appreciate for being ingeniously crafted. In this video I'm going to showcase a few of these designs, and explain what exactly makes them so horrific and memorable. And nowhere would be better to start than with the series' big bad, our old friend, Springtrap. Wait, hold on. Before we get into the video, if you watch me, you probably also watch ID's Fantasy. Currently she's trying to petition to make herself into a marketable plushie, but to do so she'll need your guys' help. Click the link in the description and it'll take you to the Make Ship page. You basically make a $2 pledge, and if enough people do so, then the plushie will actually go into production. By the time this video comes out, I think you'll have like a day left to do it. But yeah, that's all. Onto the video. If you accidentally trigger those spring locks, two things will happen. First, all the locks will snap right into you, making deep cuts all over your body. And a split second later, all the animatronic parts they've been holding back, all that sharp steel and hard plastic, will instantly be driven into your body. You'll die, but it will be slow. You'll feel your organs punctured, the suit will grow wet with your blood, and you'll know you're dying for long minutes. You'll try to scream, but you'll be unable to. Your vocal cords will be severed, and your lungs will fill with your own blood until you drown in it. William Afton, the guy you can blame for pretty much every bad thing that happens in the series, a disgusting serial killer who targeted young children attending his restaurants and hid the bodies away in the one place no one else would be sick enough to check, the animatronics. Whether he knew what he was doing at the time or not, those children became one with the machines, their loss of life as innocent children, turning them into monsters. This human-to-machine motif continued as he developed a line of animatronics specifically designed to capture and kill children. With this legacy of trapping souls in mechanical prisons, it's fitting he met the same fate. The creature of Springtrap, which rose from his agonizing death, was only partly William though. While it's obvious what makes a child murderer horrific, the animal suit he became trapped in is even more interesting. There's several different depictions of William's relationship with his yellow rabbit suit across different continuities, but the most interesting of them all comes from the Silver Eyes, where the guise of Spring Bonnie isn't just a disguise for William, it's an entirely different personality. When he dies in the suit, he even gives himself the name of Springtrap, either because of his insanity, or more interestingly, as a means to cope with his situation. The embarrassment of dying being twisted to have actually been a great thing for him. Either way, I personally like the headcanon that the suit was more than a disguise for William. It was a mask to wear to distance himself from the horrors of his crimes. I mean, in both the movie and the books, he's seen in pictures exclusively with the suit on. But between the man and the rabbit are what makes Springtrap and the Springlock suits as a whole the most visceral things to come out of this franchise, the titular Springlocks. These abysmal failures of mechanical engineering are equally horrifying as they are stupid. To be clear, in the world of a horror series, they're a genius idea. But in universe, it's incredibly questionable who thought these were a good idea. For those uninitiated, the brilliant invention of Springlocks in FNaF are devices placed in some animatronic suits as a means to make the suit work as both an animatronic and a wearable costume. The endoskeleton components of the suits compress against the inner edges of the costumes to make room for someone to fit inside. A pretty sound idea until you consider the fact that they will snap back into an animatronic at the first sign of any minor inconvenience. Long story short, you do not want to be inside of one of these things. Period. When the Springlocks become unwound, they don't just press into you, they rip your flesh open and puncture your organs, including your lungs. It's enough pain to make you want to scream, but you can't. Your lungs are now nothing more than pouches of your own blood, and your vocal cords are shred to pieces. This is what makes the Springlock scene in the movie so fascinating. People have come up with their complaints or conspiracies on William not screaming in agony as the Springlocks drive into him. I don't really think any of that is necessary. It makes perfect sense he wouldn't be screaming. He can't. If you've ever been unfortunate enough to be hit in the stomach by something, you know that your first reaction likely isn't to yell out. Instead, it's likely to drop back in the air that was just knocked out of you. The pressure from whatever hits you literally causes the air to be knocked out of you. And with the force the Springlock seemed to apply to William's torso in the scene, I think the same must be true here. He is able to work up the breath to say his catchphrase, but it's clear he's suffocating as he does so. The horror of the Springlock suits goes beyond the physical horror of Springlock failure. Something that I feel is often ignored about the suits is they are the physical representation of the criminal negligence that leads to every negative event in the story. Furthermore, they're the leading domino in the line that allowed William to get away with his murders to begin with. The reason why these half-costume, half-animatronic suits were made to begin with was due to a desire by the company to make the animatronic characters all the more immersive. By having a separate animatronic and costume for the same character, you run the risk of a child noticing both that at the same time, or the fact that they might not totally look the same, possibly confusing them or ruining their immersion. As someone who once went to Chuck E. Cheese for a birthday, I know this experience is very real. Anyways, by having the animatronic and wearable costume be the same, not only are these risks removed, but furthermore, costs can be cut in the amount of costumes that need to be made. Why make multiple when the robots and humans can just share the same suit? Of course, this introduces a new risk. With human bodies being put in the line of fire of a chain of Springlocks, this turns your fancy rabbit costume into a cheerful grave for those unfortunate enough to be inside of one that fails. So the company adapted. They added an extra room for every building as a safe room for employees, one where they could safely bleed out off camera so the customer experience is not ruined and there's nothing to prove anything bad happened to anyone. William was particularly fond of that last part, and as such, the safe rooms were the perfect place for him to pull off his child massacre, a dedicated room off camera where nobody could see what he had done. So with the suit and the man inside explained, it's no wonder why Springtrap is widely believed to be the most perfect design that emerged from the series. Not only does it illustrate the ironic fate of the series' main villain, but it's also a grim reflection of everything that happened that led to the horror to begin with. Springtrap isn't just a killer in a rabbit suit. He represents rot, decay, the perversion of innocence into the form of a monster. The corruption of something that may have once been good turns sour by what lies beneath its cuddly surface, whether it's the heart of an unsuspecting serial killer or the greedy core of a negligent business. But with that out of the way, I wanted to cover one of my personal favorite designs of the series, and the one likely occupying the thumbnail of this video.
It feels like my birthday. Did you have a gift for me?
FNaF 6 was a game where Scott really went crazy with some of the character designs. Between Lava Bear and Jimmy Neutron, you have another genuinely bizarre design. One that I find incredibly horrific in regard to the story it tells. Scrap Baby, who for whatever reason also acts as the main antagonist of this game, even though William is right there, has a design that I think is genius yet underrated and largely misunderstood, all in one package. Let me explain. In Sister Location, Baby is portrayed as a surprisingly complex character. As the game progresses, it becomes more and more confusing whether the spirit of the girl inside of her is calling the shots, or if the mind of the killer robot is pulling the strings. Even when you get scooped at the end, you're left to wonder whether Baby was evil from the start, or if sometimes the innocent spirit of Elizabeth was seriously trying to help you. When FNaF 6 came out, the community at large seemed to agree upon one thing in particular. The inner conflict between Baby and Elizabeth had concluded, with Baby emerging victorious.
So what Scott's trying to say is that the spirit of Elizabeth is still inside Baby, but Baby's programming has overtaken her spirit now, where Baby's just full killer mode now.
On the surface, that interpretation makes enough sense. A lot of her voice lines in Ultimate Custom Night involve killing you. She makes it clear by the end of 6 she wants to please William, and well, the giant lobster claw doesn't look all that innocent. But this misinterpretation that Elizabeth has been totally lost inside a Baby, I feel, undermines what makes Scrap Baby such an interesting monster in the franchise. See, it's not that Baby has overpowered the spirit of Elizabeth, it's that the personality of Baby and the personality of Elizabeth have been melded together. This becomes most clear in the way Baby talks about things in Pizza Sim. She compares the situation she's in to a gift or a birthday party, concepts that would be very familiar to a small child. But the actual situation she uses these comparisons in are much more grim. She feels like capturing and killing you compares to having a birthday party, and the prospect of having loads of children to slaughter feels like a gift to her. These comparisons highlight incredibly well the mind of an innocent child being corrupted by the mind of a killer robot. She learns to view these horrific concepts as exciting events, and where I think these interpretations best shine are in Scrap Baby's design. Obviously, she has some recognizable features of Baby, like the pigtails and the skirt, but the newer additions to her wardrobe just go further in the way of illustrating the fusion between the robot and the spirit. She has a sharp lobster claw and a spiky set of teeth, things a killer robot would love to have in their arsenal. However, she also has a tiara and roller skates, accessories that would be more attractive to a young child. It's especially the claw and the skates that sells this idea for me. Both are incredibly unusual additions to Baby's design, but as such, they're what make her stand out. They're details that are bizarre for the sake of catching our attention. The skates represent the childlike wonder that still exists in Elizabeth, while the sharp monster claw represents the evil killer that she's become. Some people had canon the idea that this claw on Scrap Baby is the same device used to capture Elizabeth, and I'm inclined to agree that's the case. With that idea in mind, it just makes it more disturbing the fact that this is her weapon of choice. If she can't remember her name, does she remember that this was the same weapon used to kill her? In my early concepts for this video, those were the only designs I considered analyzing. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of great designs in FNaF, but most of them do their job and nothing more. Like Freddy, for example. A great design for an animatronic made for children, but certainly not extraordinary. It's just about what you'd expect for the character description. However, as time has passed, I realize there's a third monster that lurks in the FNaF canon worth mentioning. A creature that actually predates Baby, yet is only now starting to enter the spotlight. To necessarily call this thing a character almost feels misrepresentative of what it is. At this point, it almost feels like a force, one that's been waiting for a long time to drop in. This, of course, is Nightmarionne, a once non-canon character that has recently started to slither its way into the FNaF story. Tony could have sworn he'd see something moving in the downpour. An elongated human-sized shape seemed to have slithered through the torrents of water just as the thunder's rumble had faded away. It hadn't been a person, obviously. Ozone has already made a great video summarizing what makes Nightmarionne so monstrous. I don't just want to restate everything he's already said, so I highly recommend you check out his video as well. To summarize though, Nightmarionne can be seen as a representation of many things. A corruption of the symbol of hope, an inescapable stalker, and even death itself. What I find so interesting about this character is how it aligns with the rest of the designs of the FNaF 4 cast, both canon and not. In FNaF 4, the main characters of the first game, plus a plush version of Springtrap, take on the most monstrous forms we've ever seen. Well, okay, not counting the twisted animatronics, but we can talk about this another time. In the Halloween DLC for FNaF 4, nightmare forms of Mango, Balloon Boy, and of course the puppet came to be, alongside jack-o'-lantern versions of Bonnie and Chica. While these designs are pretty great across the board, something has always made Nightmarionne stand out from the rest of this lineup. And no, it isn't the distinct lack of coloration. I've gone on record to say my favorite designs from a FNaF fan game are the monster characters from Five Nights at Candy's 3. The reason for this is the fact that unlike the nightmares, these creatures are meant to be actual beasts, not scary robots. If my mascot doesn't make it obvious, I'm a big fan of monsters, and while scary robots are great, I feel like the nightmares don't totally sit right with me. If we're to believe the designs of the nightmares spawned from the fear of a child, and yes, I know that's debatable, but bear with me, why do they still take the form of robots and not organic creatures like we see in Five Nights at Candy's 3? Again, this isn't a huge problem, just a slight nuance that has bothered me over the years. The main game cast and Nightmare Mango are all distinctly robotic, with parts of their metal endoskeletons being visible. Nightmare Balloon Boy, while his endoskeleton can't be seen, is unmistakably made of plastic. He's very clearly artificial in some way, just like the others. Though notably, his upper jaw isn't connected to the rest of his body, so I guess that's something. Nightmarionne, though, something is different with that one. While his mask is distinctly plastic looking, I can't say the same for the rest of his body, which almost looks fleshy. This isn't helped by the fact that in Help Wanted, his arms work like tentacles, and even make a gross wet noodle sound as they wiggle around. Whatever this thing is, it's not like the other nightmares. It seriously doesn't feel like a robot, it feels like an organic monster. And those eyes. They're ethereal in normal brightness, but by brightening Nightmarionne's jump scare, they look to be full eyeballs, perhaps even having bloodshot veins in them. Whatever this thing is, it's scarily organic, and there's no strings on it either. It's a beast once confined to its cage of being non-canon that has now possibly been set loose in the world of FNaF. Security breach having a scary amount of imagery that forebodes its existence. And if it does show its horrible face in the canon again, I'm certainly excited to see what this beast is actually supposed to be. But really, those are all the designs I wanted to cover. It's really amazing how great they are on physical and symbolic levels, especially when you consider the fact that Scott has gone on record to say that most of these character designs just kind of come to him. There's not really a planning phase as he creates them. The monster appears in his mind, and he models it. And I think it's fitting 2 of these 3 designs are the main antagonists of their respective games. A memorable villain makes for a memorable game, though it's a mystery why people remember Security Breach.